listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the College Bowl preview for Monday, January 6th, 2020. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
So at long last, it's time to talk about the championship in college football. And the two best teams have made it. Should be an incredible showdown, and I think the handle is going to be through the roof. Brian Blessing in Las Vegas. Clemson, LSU. Let's dive right in. Let's get the Jack, our go-to resource from the odds-making side of the counter. Jack, big boy football. These teams were kind of on a collision course. You always figure an upset or two could be out there. Clemson finds a way to come back from the grave against Ohio State. And it's amazing. A team that's won 29 in a row, a quarterback that's never lost in his career, a coach that knows how to win the national championship or catching points. This should be fun.
It should be a great game. This game, if we had done it weeks ago, Clemson probably would have been a small favorite. When this game was posted, after Burrows had put on that great display on that Saturday afternoon, LSU was posted as a 3-point favorite with a total of 68.5, and it climbed almost immediately to 5, and total of 69.5. Very tough game. I personally, I would favor Clemson. I think the number's a little too high, but if you watch Burrow play, he's like a professional quarterback playing in college football right now, and not your running, scrambling type. He's like a man, like an Aaron Rodgers in his prime, playing against college football players. And it's going to be a very tough matchup.
Tell me about the number when you're hanging this number. Was this really, well, I know we always hear about ticket count, pros versus Joes, and all these little buzz things that everybody says. But all right, LSU rolls Oklahoma. Clemson is asleep at the switch, but comes back and kicks the door down. In a weird way, to me, I think just the belief of what you saw mirrors the markets that are out there. It's like they showed me so much being pushed and fighting and coming back. They show me more than going and rolling somebody. But the public's like, hey, man, look, they killed somebody. They love the team that killed somebody.
They do. And you can see their point. They're saying, hey, they're a class above a very good Oklahoma team, while Clemson was life and death with Ohio State. I personally think Ohio State might have been the best team in the country, but Clemson beat them. They came back, and they've been in championship games. Last year was not a close game for them. They took care of it. Early on, it was Alabama, and Clemson was very close. Clemson blew their doors off. But a couple of years ago, Clemson and Alabama was back and forth, and they've been in other games where they just know how to win. There's an SEC prejudice, I think, that factors in to the public when it comes to wagering. They think the SEC, personally think it's a little overrated, but they think that is the conference. ACC did not fare well in some of their other games in the bowls, but this is an exceptional Clemson team, as you said, 29-0, and they blew out everybody in their conference, so they're a class above them. Tough game. I want to see what LSU does if it stays tough, and I think Clemson will survive.
Do you shake your head a little bit? I mean, you could care less. You want two-way action. The market is what the market is. But if indeed Ohio State was the best team, and this team, I mean, literally had to completely start over and come from 16 down and then stare them face-to-face in the fourth quarter and win that game, I'm with you. The number, it just seems too high to me, but that's not what you're there for. I mean, you factor that opinion into making a number, but you're looking at the masses.
Our opinion only comes in the opening number, and after that, it's just pure money that drives it. And if the public's perception is this, now you may take 10 public guys against one smart guy, and you may favor the smart guy, but it's still ultimately the money and your exposure that has to affect the closing number.
5.5 is a number, right, Jack? That could dance a little bit. What do you think could happen in that regard?
I tell you the truth. They opened the 3, which I thought was, I would have favored Clemson at 3, but obviously the world doesn't. So it's up to 5.5. I can't see it going any higher. I mean, there'll be a lot of action come Monday, and it's college football and the public. Whereas during the regular season, wise guys rule the world. Their money controls the market. There's so much interest in this championship game. It could be unpredictable, and it could get to 6.5, but we'll see what happens.
And the total, looking for a track meet, huh? At least that's what people think.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough not to. I mean, LSU moves the ball on everybody. Clemson moves the ball on everybody. The points are out there. I don't think either defense can overmatch the offense. Now, whether they've certainly given them a mountain to climb with 69. So, well, I don't know that they can get there, but I think the total should come down. I think the side stays the same. The total comes down a little.
It's not an intangible thing, but it is in relation to the number. I don't know. I always believe it should be. We've had this discussion before. When in doubt, I'll take the coach I trust more. And I'm not knocking Orgeron. It's a great story. What he's done with the program and what this quarterback's done, where he's come from and what he's turned into. But my God, what has Dabo done wrong? And you wonder if you wouldn't have to give the edge, at least on the coaching equation, to Swinney. This is just off the cuff, but if the coaches were reversed on the teams, I think LSU would be like a 7-point favorite. There you go.
I wonder if USC rues not hiring Orgeron as their coach.
You think? Jeez.
Although it worked out best for him, he's where he wants to be. I firmly believe that. This is his home area. He's happy, and it's all worked out for him. And thank God, he did a good job when he filled in there, and he deserves all this.
He fits like a glove. It's hard not to root for the guy, to be honest with you.
It is. He's a down-to-earth guy.
Yeah, no, it's outstanding. As are you, Jack. You're a down-to-earth guy with all the, the big information we need, and you always get our process started because that's what we do. We go to the odds makers, and you're our man. It's been a crazy football season, crazy college season, Jack, down to one big game. Give me the closing number. We'll wrap it with this. What do you think it closes?
Closing number, LSU 6 and 67.5.
Jack, has always been a fun college football season. Great information, Jack. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's make some money tonight.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. Now we go to Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet. Brian Blessing, we're here in Las Vegas, and we're focused on Clemson and LSU. Bruce, let me get your reaction first of all on the number with LSU, a 5.5-point favorite, the total 69.5 or 70. Clemson, 29 wins in a row. A coach knows how to win national championships, comes from the grave and beats Ohio State, and a quarterback that willed his team back, who has never lost a game, and they're catching 5.5 points. Are you a little surprised?
No, but I think it creates value. And I'm only not surprised because I sort of expected the public to react that way after the semifinal round. I don't think it's a proper number, no. And I think this thing, and there have been some sixes we've seen around town and elsewhere in the country, Brian. So if you're a Clemson bettor, I think you can wait and you might have your chance to jump in there at 6 at some point. But had this game been played 2 weeks ago in the semifinal round here in New Orleans, I think LSU probably would have been 3, maybe 2.5. And you're getting an extra bump of about a field goal, I think, because of what happened in that game, the respective games. But I think that is a totally wrong reaction. It's understandable, but it's a faulty reaction because by me, Clemson and us at Gold Sheet, Clemson showed a little more coming back, pulling itself out of the abyss the way it did against Ohio State than that party LSU had against Oklahoma, where it was just a track meet in the first half and it was Fun City, and Oklahoma just played into it and it just got out of hand.
It's almost like you weren't. And I would just say this, you weren't, but it's almost like you were sitting there listening to Jack and I talk, because I virtually said the same thing. I said, Clemson shows me so much more by digging down deep to win a game. I learn I think more of a team like that than a team that puts the Sasquatch foot on somebody.
Yes, and and Clemson was in real dire trouble in that game. I mean, it looked like they were getting knocked out early, but at every key point in the game when that thing looked like it might get out of hand, they made the play to stay in it. Now the touchdown that was overruled, which is a proper call there, Ohio State, receiver, that he did trap the ball in the end zone, so that was not a fluke call. That could have changed things some, but I mean, they kept holding Ohio State to field goal. So instead of this thing getting out 17, 24, 27, nothing, 10, 13, 16, and that kept it within strike distance. And then Clemson got rolling there, and down the stretch, Clemson outscored Ohio State 29-7 in that game. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive. And Ohio State's a great team, but Clemson gradually ended up taking control of that game. And at almost every point then just simply made the play it had to make. That's discipline, it's self-belief, and it's control. And you saw, Ohio State in some key moments in that game, a couple of penalties, the headshot on Lawrence, the roughing the kicker, a couple of turnovers then by Fields. I mean, Ohio State buckled in those moments, and you didn't think that team would do it. Clemson did not make those mistakes, and that's why I won the game.
Hey, I'm not shooting holes at LSU. And Orgeron's a great story. Burrow's a great story. But every year we sit there and talk about the Big 12 and, can they step up in a big game? Or they look great all year long till you get to the big game, and then they get freight trained. And, LSU steps up to the plate, and they accomplish that. I just wonder how much of this is that SEC. Yeah, it's an SEC team.
Yeah, I think, sure. I think that's part of it too. And the last thing we saw, and again, a lot of people get, when you have a team, really boat race somebody the way LSU did to Oklahoma. I mean, that thing was 49-14 at halftime. They probably could have scored 80 points if they wanted. But Oklahoma was playing right into it. I mean, they had a couple of turnovers there. They weren't able to sustain any drive, and that's what you've got to do to slow the pace some on LSU. And that's what Clemson was able to do against Ohio State. When they needed to answer there and to keep the ball for a while, they were able to do it. And then in the last 2 minutes, when they had to get 94 yards, it only took them 4 plays to do it. And Lawrence, and by the way, his running earlier in the game set up that last touchdown to Etienne on that little dump pass there, because, I mean, he drew the defense in toward him, and Lawrence proved he could sure beat Ohio State with his legs, and all of a sudden that pass opened up. And Etienne, by the way, there's your other secret weapon here. Well, not so secret. I mean, big plays. All year he's able to do that, and we talked about that before. This guy gained 1,500 yards playing a little more than half of the games this year because they were so far ahead. He is a big play threat. He could have been in the Heisman mix if Dabo wanted to use him more this year. He didn't have to in a lot of those games. He's another threat that Clemson has, and he was big in that game against the Buckeyes.
The point is the point. The word just stole my thunder, but it's the crazy. That's what I was just going to say to you. And by the way, I bet Etienne to win the Heisman, so I know he could have won the Heisman had they used him. But where he's really dangerous is out of the backfield. 3 catches, 98 yards, couple of touchdowns. In that game against Ohio State. I just think it's a well-rounded team. Well, what does experience mean, Bruce, on this stage?
Oh, sure. I mean, Dabo, since 2012, he is 10-1 against the spread in bowl playoff games, 9-2 straight up. The only 2 losses to Nick in Alabama. One was really close with Watson in a championship game. He's avenged that, beating Saban twice in championship games. Those are the only games he's lost. Ohio State 3 times, Oklahoma twice, Bama twice, Notre Dame once, and LSU once. By the way, this is when it all started. Just a quick note back, it was the Peach Bowl in 2012, and that's when Taj Boyd was there and DeAndre Hopkins, and that combination helped Clemson rally to win the game on a field goal by Catanzaro, who was an NFL kicker, at the gun, 25-24. There were a lot of LSU people that night. I can remember it distinctly. Who started to say, you know what? They started to get really mad at Les Miles being conservative and couldn't extend the lead or keep the lead late in the game. They kept going 3 and out, and it sort of planted the seed right then for his eventual ouster early in 2016. And then Orgeron came, but it took losing to Bama big last year, that 29-0, which was really the come to Jesus moment for Orgeron, and said, I got to change this thing. Give Big Ed credit. He got out of the way, brought Joe Brady in, and let him and Ensminger, and Brady in particular, redesign the offense. And he's just doing what he should do, be the CEO and let the other guys handle it. And that is what's happening. Burrow has put up the greatest year we've seen for a quarterback ever, really.
Okay, I was just going to say, at some point here, but let's get to LSU. I'm the one guilty of it, driving the bus here. And 29-39, 493, 7 touchdowns against Oklahoma. It's been a video game season for Burrow. He's been remarkable. But in a close game, I think they got to start running the ball a little bit, Bruce. In this game, I think they have to run the ball effectively here. And why wouldn't you? The season he's had. But LSU has relied on the pass.
Yeah, they have. Now, I think Edwards-Helaire, and then he seemed healthy enough in that game against Oklahoma. I mean, he might be one of he and Swift at Georgia are probably two of the best backs, and Harris at Alabama, top backs in the SEC. And that's the other thing. Even if Edwards-Helaire was out, the other Orgeron's got other guys who would have put up a lot of yards too. It just happened to be Edwards-Helaire doing most of it. And you're right. They're going to have to probably run some here, but Burrow's numbers. I mean, you noted the numbers against the Sooners. For a guy who's completed 55 TD passes, which is staggering, to also complete nearly 78% of his passes. I mean, that usually doesn't jibe. That downfield passing, usually the percentage is down a little bit. I mean, he's setting completion percentage records along with the TDs and all those receivers. This is a video game offense. You're very right, but there is one note here. There is one team that slowed LSU down some. And LSU was also pushed in a couple of games. The Alabama game wasn't easy. The Texas game wasn't easy. The Florida game wasn't easy. And the Auburn game wasn't easy. And in that one, it only was 23-20. What happened in that game? Auburn's defensive coordinator, Kevin Steele, came up with something kind of radical. I mean, they were deploying 3-1-7 looks, alignments on defense. He flooded his platoon with defensive backs. Now, he had the defensive front. He thought, I can play 3 down and 1 linebacker and control this running game because his line was that good. And he's one of the few defenses that could do that. And for the most part, it worked in that game. They really had LSU flustered for much of that game. Brent Venables is a very smart guy. He might be able to do something similar to that. And not many teams have had the personnel mix on defense that Venables had. Venables also has one thing that Steele didn't have, and that's Isaiah Simmons, who's the Butkus Award winner. But he's more of a hybrid. Big linebacker. He can float back into safety. He's sort of like a better version of David Fulcher from Arizona State. You might remember him back in the 80s, and then he was a star for the Bengals for many years. He's everywhere on the field, and he confounded Fields from Ohio State. Remember, Ohio State did throw for 320 in the Fiesta Bowl, but no gain more than 24 yards. They kept everything pretty much in front of him, and Simmons made several big plays, and that's the sort of guy nobody in the I don't think there's a better defensive player in the country than Simmons, even Chase Young at Ohio State, and Burrow gets a chance to see him for the first time next Monday. And
you watch some of the highlights from that game with Oklahoma. Oklahoma's tackling was pretty atrocious, but Burrow, when he's really dangerous too, and Burrow's, when he steps up into the pocket, he can run, but when he steps up into the pocket, his eyes are downfield.
They are, and you did mention, could run. Burrow's a really good athlete. He probably could have been a college basketball player too if he wanted. And he can run. He's pretty nimble. But you're right, he is looking downfield, and he, among college quarterbacks, I don't know I've ever seen one do some of the NFL sort of things that he's doing, and that is throwing progression. 1, 2, 3, 4. He is scanning the field downfield. You can just see that it's clicking for him, and he's able to get off of one receiver onto the other. There's no such thing as tunnel vision with him. He is able to to throw in progression and find out which one of his guys is open. And that is a very, very tough thing to defend. And that's why I think he's, I don't want to jump ahead too far when the Bengals draft him, which I'm sure they will. I think he has a chance to be a really good NFL quarterback too, because he's mastered some of those things already. It's made him a lethal force. His receivers also don't ever drop the ball, and he's got a lot of guys who can get downfield and run when they catch it. So the whole combination has worked good, but it comes back to Coach O just getting out of the way and getting the right people in charge and letting them do his thing. There are a lot of head coaches that are too hands-on, and they can't ever step back and let the guys do what their specialty is. Jim Harbaugh is one guy that comes to mind with that. And I don't think he could ever do what Orgeron did this year and just let these guys come in and do their thing, and give Coach O credit for that, because Joe Brady, you talk about a guy who's worth something, and they're probably going to keep him next year, because they're going to have to pay to keep him, and they're going to do it. Because some of the assistants that O has are the highest paid assistants in the country, including his coordinator on defense, Dave Aranda, who is, I think, the top paid assistant, and the second top paid is the coordinator on the other side, Brett Venables for Clemson.
Are you thinking track meet, Bruce? How about the pace of play?
I don't think, in relation to the over, I don't think it gets there, though. I think the pace of play will be kind of brisk. Yeah. But I think also the clock will probably move some, and I don't think they clear that 69.5. Listen, Ohio State was a track meet team too. I mean, it looked not completely in the air the way LSU did, but Ohio State scored as many points this year as LSU, and that game slowed down last week. I think Clemson can slow the game down, though, enough, and that is part of it with Lawrence running. Part of it, his receivers were a little bit banged up, Higgins and Holt, that game against Ohio State. They've had a couple weeks to get well, and Etienne. They can control the ball some too. I think that's going to be important. And I think that is one thing that Oklahoma had to do, which it didn't. And that is just, take some time against LSU when you're on offense there and use the clock some. And I think Dabo knows that. And I think they're going to do that against this LSU defense, which had some leaks at times this season. So that's why I think it's going to go under barely. Even though both these teams can certainly score enough, but I think it stays just under that 69.5.
The bottom line is the two teams that deserve to be here are here.
They are. We in Gold Sheet, we had a 34-31 Clemson. We thought we're going to take them. Let's take them to win it. And in the end, maybe just a default. Everything we talk about, all the angles, maybe it's just a default recommendation on Dabo is all that's required here, and that's what we did.
There you have it. Great information. He's Bruce Marshall from the legendary publication, The Gold Sheet. I'm Brian Blessing in Las Vegas. Enjoy it. It's going to be great. Down to the final game of the year, Clemson and LSU.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com, and reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and/or interpersonal relationships. at betmaker.com. And the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling, an approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.